You're listening to Within Tolerance, a podcast for machinists by a machinist. I'm your host, Dylan Jackson of Protean Machining, and this week I am rejoined by Brad of Hourglass Ingenuity. Welcome back, Brad.
Hey, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Absolutely, man. Couldn't say no. I love this thing.
I really appreciate it, and you've had a lot of change since the last time you were on. So, for anybody who wants to hear Brad's backstory, go listen to episode 93. That was when Brad was first on, and we talked through his how he got to where he is now, and kind of an update on his company. And since then, you've had a lot of movement and changeover. So why don't you tell us all what's been going on?
Well, since we last talked, I think I just got the first mini mill, and then a little bit after that, I got a second mini mill with a fourth axis, and then I was in my garage, and then I ended up getting into a shop location, and finally got that set up. It's still a little chaotic, but I've been just cranking away, trying to make as many parts as possible. Business has been good, and I've came out with a couple other products, and just getting completely beat to death by machining and trying to get it all done, and inspiration and no inspiration and burnout, and it's been a good time.
Awesome. So you had kind of mentioned, I think, on the last episode that finding real estate was hard. So how did that process go? Did you find something you were happy for? How long did it take? All that stuff.
Yeah, it was pretty easy. Found a couple of locations. Affordability wise, I had to change cities. So I went from Parker, Colorado to Colorado Springs. Quite a few commercial buildings around with three-phase power. It's kind of just finding the right one, something that's not completely destroyed. And I ended up getting into a 1,700 square foot shop, which is a little bit tight as of this point. I've kind of filled it up already. I do have enough room for one more machine. But it's been good having an actual dedicated shop space and a little bit of separation, work from home, mixed with just the space to actually do what you need instead of just being completely confined in the garage, which there's no problem there. I mean, I loved working in the garage, and the reduction in overhead and everything else was absolutely fantastic. But there is a lot of productivity to be had when you do have the space. It's pretty cool.
I imagine even just part storage is a lot easier because you're making hundreds of parts at a time, and with two machines in a garage, that's not a lot of room left to clean or store parts or anything like that.
Yeah, plus cutting with the bandsaw, I was able to get a bigger bandsaw. I was able to get a Cerakote booth, actually fit all of these things inside of there comfortably and be able to be somewhat organized. I say somewhat because I'm still trying to find a place for everything, and without a location for everything, man, it's just real hard to put everything back exactly where it goes. So I'm finding the struggles of, kind of my mantra of organization is productivity. I'm finding how difficult it's been while being in this shop to actually get that implemented.
Well, you've also been running around pretty crazy. It's really cool to see how productive you can be. You've been putting out a ton of product and new parts, like you said. So
Yeah.
I understand. This is also my busiest time of year, and yeah, it seems like every third or fourth day I have to spend a couple hours cleaning because I just leave everything like a tornado hit the shop.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes I think that maybe I discourage people when I'm starting to kind of pitch my whole, keep your shop nice and organized and yada yada yada. But lately, I came across this quote that said, like, if your shop is absolutely spotless and you're a one-man show, you may not be making money. And that is too true.
Yeah.
So I kind of bite my tongue on that and, do what you can do. I got a heavy reality check, and I'm still trying to catch up here. So it's not easy to be as organized as I would have liked it to be. So, and that's just raw, real. Hear it Within Tolerance podcast. So,
Well, but I think the point to be made is that your products help make organization easy, because like I'll do the easy stuff. Like I have two of your marker organizers on my machines, and my markers are always put away. It might be the only thing in the shop that are always put away, but like
yeah.
because they're easy and they're handy, I use them and I put them right back. Whereas like anything else that actually I have to go open a drawer and find places for, that's the stuff that gets left out for a little while.
Yep, I hear you, man. If I could just have a place for everything, that's why I'm just like, okay, what's next? What's next? Every single issue I run into, I'm like, how can I solve this? So, and you go on these like tangents of just like insane productivity and just creativity, and you just like banging stuff out, coming up with cool ideas. And then you just hit a brick wall and you're just like, boom, I just exerted so much energy that like my brain needs to catch up.
Yeah,
So
definitely. Well, actually, so you brought that up. We had a few questions from listeners about your design process and inspiration and all that. So Tux Garage asked, "Do you ever sleep? How do you come up with inspiration for your designs?" And Alex asked, "How did you develop your design style and language? What influenced you to get to where you are now?"
yeah, so my design style comes from firearms and kind of modern day futuristic space stuff. I love toolpaths and I love texture and I just kind of love crazy lines, trying to keep it organic, but also just like very eye catching. I just have a certain way. I just keep pulling stuff around until I can kind of figure out exactly the aesthetic I'm shooting for. And I can do it pretty quick most of the time. And then sometimes I get stuck on features. But I love skeletonized stuff and pocketing and lightweight stuff. I love um, speed holes and, just weight reduction in general. Carbon fiber and titanium and aluminum in the aerospace world really intrigues me. And just how they do that stuff. Generative design is amazing, and I wish I could implement more of it into certain stuff like true generative design. But for the most part, it's really just I used to be shoot competitive stuff and whatnot, but lately, with the prices going up on everything, it's kind of impossible to do that at the
Yeah,
time at the moment. But just looking at lowers and uppers and different things, how people do them and in the design aspect and what they bring to the table is absolutely incredible and super inspiring to me. And if you look at like futuristic renderings of like hammers and in certain things in the future, it's incredible. I love it. Like I love the aesthetic and the geometry that people implement into just like futuristic modern stuff. So that's kind of where I pull the inspiration for the designs. Do I ever sleep? I've actually made it a priority to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night.
good
And
for
then
you.
every
I'm
waking
so
hour,
happy to hear that, dude.
every waking hour besides that is usually at the shop. But it's not really anything about going out and having fun at the moment. I'm shooting to get to that point to where I can kind of enjoy some stuff. But right now it's like wake up, get there, put in work, stay all day, try not to leave because as soon as I leave, I lose all my productivity. It's like as soon as I walk out that building to go run an errand, it's like I'm just going to burn so much time
Yep.
and then get back home and go to sleep and do it again. So it's kind of where I'm at right now.
Okay, so yeah, I actually had a few more too. So Ben from Fort Manufacturing asked, how you're so awesome at designing beautiful things. But I guess to go along with all these questions, are there any other makers in the space, or even just you know makers or artists or whatever that you draw inspiration from?
So there's tons of talented people that I absolutely love looking at. I try my absolute best to be as original as possible, and I don't want to try and pull too much from people that are doing stuff because then I find myself turning something into something that's not really me, even though I love it and I love the idea. I really try and just pull from just random things that I see on the streets, or I'll go to like aircraft museums and certain stuff like that and just kind of jot down ideas and geometry and features that I see and stuff that I'd like to implement into my own product. But as you know, I mean, there's too many people to list on Instagram that do absolutely incredible work. I don't know what I would do if I tried to actually list all of their names. I mean, Grimsmo does some fantastic stuff with his knives. All the knife makers are huge. HMC, Ken at Zodiac does incredible stuff. Joe at Random Fabrication has an incredible mind. There's tens. I mean, there's 100 people right now that I'd love to list, and you guys know who you are. But just keep up the great work and just the drive to see you guys actually doing stuff every single day, putting in the work, and coming out with new, fresh stuff makes me want to get up in the morning.
That's awesome. So another part of that question from Gamble Garage was, how many iterations does it take before you're happy with something? So like, what about the mag tabs or your M12 battery mounts? Like, how long did that take to get where you're happy selling it?
So I'm usually one and done on the design. I'll make maybe little tiny tweaks after I run my first prototype. The thing that takes the longest is the toolpaths. I'll sit there and go through like 8, 9, 10 parts and just tweaking toolpaths and degrees or step overs and depths. and just everything in regards to surfacing until I'm like, yeah, this is clean. Or maybe I get some rubbing on some geometry and I got to switch it up so I can make sure that there's not any chips being recut. You know what I mean? So I got to kind of just tweak things until I'm super happy and I can pull a part off and shine it in the light in every which direction and just say, yeah, this looks clean. So it's definitely, sometimes I'll do two or three until the toolpaths are, acceptable for me. Sometimes I'll do 10, sometimes I'll do 15. So it just depends. But in regards to design iteration on products, usually if I'm meticulous enough and I try and be as precise as possible, I can get it pretty close the first time, at least in regards to like nothing of mine is super complicated. So all of my features and stuff are pretty easy to nail down the first time, or I'll just take a little bit of extra time to scan something, not 3D scan, 2D scan, and then kind of just scale it. And a couple of 3D prints usually save me a lot of time on the mill.
Okay. Yeah. So what 3D printers do you have, and how have you been liking that, adding that to your process?
I just have the Prusa, not the XL with multiple head changes, which is absolutely mind blowing to me.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It is really cool. Just the old Prusa, man, it just kicks butt. It just does what it needs to do. It's reliable. It prints great. I'm probably going to add a few more. I've been kind of flirting with the idea of pre-ordering that XL, but it's a bit much for what I'm trying to do. I don't like 3D printing parts if I don't have to, but prototyping, it's just absolutely priceless.
Yeah, and it keeps you making chips, which is always nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just the fitment, they're so accurate too, they're so accurate that you can get so close to what your final product's going to be when you actually machine it.
Yeah, definitely. Paul Sokoff asked, do you like being a sole entrepreneur, or do you want to grow larger and have employees?
I like being solo. I don't want to deal with the stress of employees or anything down the road. It's kind of a bit much. I want to keep it small. I want to keep QC high. I want to keep my quality high and my products kind of just where I can control them in the quantities that I can control them by myself.
Okay.
So, in regards to, let's read that question again. Solo entrepreneur, grow larger, have employees. I do a lot of stuff and I wear a lot of hats. So I'm trying to design packaging and stickers and do the marketing and try and get back to people on Instagram and everything. So even right now, my workload is pretty overwhelming to me. And I think maybe a third machine with possibly some automation or just some really good fixturing or pallets could be the key to holding inventory. But again, low business history, not easy to get financed, not enough cash flow to buy the machine I actually want at the moment. So I was kind of flirting with trying to buy a machine cash for the last couple of weeks. And I just don't really trust used machines. And as much as I really want to, I just don't want to get into the headache of possibly having a problem and having to sink tons of money into something that's just sitting there. So, anyways, I appreciate the question. And what does work life balance look like right now? Is it something you would change? Work life balance is pretty chaotic right now. To be completely honest, and this is just a topic that I think is super important and may be uncomfortable to other people, but I'm going to say it anyways, is mental health, man, is like probably the most important thing that people need to focus on. And it's not easy at all to do some of this stuff and be perfectly content in your own life without some type of balance. It's easy to just lose. I'm sure you can understand. I mean, can you touch on this at all? Can you touch on this at all in regards to just like mental health and just being, mentally fit when it comes to the grind?
Oh, it's incredibly hard. That's actually something I've said. I think I've had a bunch of people reach out over Instagram and say, "Oh, you're full time now. How is it going?" And literally, the first comment I always have is, "It's been the biggest increase in mental health, or like the biggest thing for my mental health that I've done in 6 years. Since I started the company with my business partner. Like that, now I have the time to like see my wife and get sleep and choose my own schedule, and I'm not like feeling like I'm just punching a clock anymore. And that's not to say that there's not a whole bunch of new stress. Like I've got to self motivate now, which is different.
Yeah.
It's never been like this. And working out tax stuff and paying ourselves and all that stuff, like that's not fun either. But I, at least right now, I would gladly trade that stress over the stress of working two jobs again, because that was really not good for my mental health.
Absolutely. No, and it's hard to function, man. Sometimes it's hard to function. Sometimes it's hard to get up and get out of bed. I can get up at 3 a.m. and work all day long for X amount of days, and then I might just like fall off for a week, and I'll be getting up later and I'll be a lot more tired. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, definitely. And working for somebody else to me is kind of like going to prison. In my head, it's kind of, I don't like feeling like I'm in a cage or like I'm stuck anywhere. I like being able to be creatively free and do what I want to do. And that doesn't say that there's great job opportunities around, but I think I'm better off working for myself. But it's definitely been a struggle. Positive, yes, the freedom has been positive, but also some of the deadlines and some of the problems that I run into with a part that I'm trying to machine or something that kicks my butt really just throws me in the gutter sometimes. So it is tough. It is very, very tough. And then the last question from him is, do you have R&D time scheduled, or does it get fit in around production? It gets fit in around production. I have to try and model whatever I'm trying to do, cam it, 3D print it while other parts are running. And then if I have a minute for a machine, I'll throw a piece of stock in there, make a prototype. Sometimes I'll have op ones going and they're not quite ready to flip into the second machine. So I'll have a machine open for a couple of hours and I can make a prototype and kind of figure that part out. But yeah, no R&D time is scheduled. That is what I'm shooting for in the future. I want just a nice free schedule and to be caught up X amount of months. And I can sit there and actually truly design to the T what I want, because I do find myself rushing sometimes.
Okay. So I've got maybe a sort of difficult question, because the last time you were on, you were talking about how much you hated the pre-orders that you had done because of the
Ah.
stress it put on you. But then you did another pre-order. So is there a part of you that kind of likes being under the gun a little bit?
Well, number one, I saw you voted no on that. So thank you for
I was
that.
thinking about your mental health, dude.
Yeah, no. Yes, pre-orders are extremely stressful, but pre-orders drive production and they just drive me. It's very stressful, and when I'm on my game, I'm on my game. And that's kind of a gamble. I like risk taking and I like deadlines somewhere inside of my soul, I think. Um, so it's kind of a tricky question. Yeah, I said how stressful pre-orders were, and they are, but at the same time, it's kind of fun to throw up pre-orders on the website, have 400 orders to fulfill in less than 30 days, and then get it done. And if you can get it done and pull it off, the satisfaction that you have and like just the calming relaxation that comes over you where you can just sit back and all that anxiety is alleviated is pretty magical. So yeah, it's not fun, but it is pretty amazing if you can pull it off.
Okay. Yeah, that's honestly, I can't say anything because I'll take on rush orders and then wait till the last second to get them done too.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I got plenty of time, and I'll, have nice lazy days where I'm doing the programming all slow and stuff, and then like really bust ass at the very end. So
Yep.
I must be of the same ilk there, where I kind of need to be under the gun to really get anything done.
Yeah, no, it's nice. And then if you're slacking off and you're just like moving slow and you're just like, oh, I can't do this today, and you have like 10 days to get the job done. That's kind of where I'm at right now. So it wouldn't be so bad if I could control every process, but when I have to put anodizing in somebody else's hand and deal with their lead time, that is where the uncertainty comes in.
Totally. So since you brought it up, Ben from Fort Manufacturing also asked, where are you getting your anodizing done, and how has that situation gone? Because I know you were having some issues last time you were on with that.
Yeah, so the last anodizer that I used, I was having some issues with some stuff that I had to switch up companies. And I'm using a company in Colorado Springs called XIMPAK, and they're called Zimpac. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it. So they're IS and AS certified, and they do all types of cool aerospace stuff and whatnot there. So their QC process is pretty on point, and checking all their tanks and everything on a regular, basis and keeping all of that stuff filed is something that they do regularly, so I can trust their process. As long as I'm careful and I do blueprints and I kind of like point out where I want things racked from and like where it's absolutely not acceptable to rack my parts from. They do a pretty good job. One thing I'm facing right now is packing my parts safely enough to where they get there and back, and like the anodizer, whoever is packing them, can actually put them back correctly so they're not rubbing on each other and causing like impingement or whatever. So sometimes I'll get some blemished products back that have just little tiny micro impingement marks from touching each other or vibrating in the truck on my drive home. So I've kind of implemented a new workflow for that, and we will see how that works. But it's kind of a gigantic pain. Small parts are easy and egg crate flats or whatever, but bigger parts are kind of tricky. So they've been good. They do good coloring, no custom colors or anything like that. They run all their colors every day of the week. They have a pretty quick turnaround time, and I can expedite within 24 hours for only $100 usually. So that kind of gets me out of a pinch. And sometimes I'll be like, listen, man, I'll give you like $300-400 if you can get this done in like 2 days. On top of the cost. I'm late. Make up for my failures here.
Yeah, I think we've all done that at some point for sure.
That's how I live, man, like religiously. It's like no matter who I talk to, I'm like, I'll give you double. I'll give you like $200 if you can get this done. Like, is there any expedited rushing capabilities here? Like, that's who I start my conversations off with, like, no matter who I'm talking about. Because I feel like I'm always behind and I can never just do like standard. Like, can we ship that overnight? Can you do this in 24 hours? So,
right. Well, I mean,
and if
that's
somebody
what,
asked me that, I'd be like, you're out of luck, buddy.
right. Well, and I mean, that's what Phil from MJK was saying when he was on the podcast, is that like, they pay over the shop rate for their anodizers specifically so that they take extra care on their parts. And so,
Oh yeah, I've had
sometimes you got to do
conversations
that.
with him. That is insane what they do, and the quality of their work and the quality of their coatings and the issues that he's had in the past with anodizers. So he's super educated. He filled me in on so many things that I was just like opened my eyes to the precision in the process, even pre-anodized before you even drop your parts off. So he's an incredible guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's tough. Like, it's not easy to find a good plater. I was just talking to Nick Frank from the Frank Brothers Guitar Company, and him and Aaron have a podcast together. They mentioned on their last episode that, they're having issues with platers and they had to switch to a new one. And the thing I was telling them, like, we found a really good anodizer, and they're really good because they're an in-house anodizer. And
Okay.
so they do their own product so well that like then they branched out and formed a second business to do outside processing. And they are like top tier. So if you can ever find somebody that does it in-house for their own product, you can probably find somebody that like has a little bit more attention to detail rather than just like, oh, this is $100 lot. Who gives a shit?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the problem, is anodizing is so cheap
Yeah.
that, like I said last time I was on here, that it is just really hard to find quality. There's an Instagram account called NS Precision Incorporated. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have they been on?
No, not yet.
Okay, so I guess it's some twin brothers that are both engineers by day and instant machinists by night. That's what their bio is on Instagram. But I talked to them the other day, man, and they are some smart dudes. They do their anodizing in-house by themselves because they were having problems with quality control. And they kind of started on like a DIY level, and now they're at like a pretty impressive level when it comes to anodizing their own parts. And just the chemistry that spews out of both of their mouths when I talk to them on the phone just absolutely boggles my mind. So they're very intelligent, and they've tried to help me out with the anodizing process because I was flirting with the idea of doing it myself. And after talking to them, I was like, nope.
Probably not. Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, they do amazing work, and like their colors are so deep. And
I know.
Yeah, it's impressive for sure.
So that's kind of why I got on the Cerakote bandwagon. And it looks like there was a question about how's the Cerakote process working out.
Yeah, Boone Freeman wanted to know.
Yeah, so the Cerakote process is pretty involved as far as prep goes, and when it comes to production, it's kind of tricky. Like, it's really hard to do production for me when it comes to prepping and making sure all your parts are staged correctly and everything. And I haven't actually done a full production run in Cerakote. I've only just kind of played with one-off stuff and patterns and masking and stuff. But it's an amazing process. It's a pretty incredible coating, but it is really labor intensive, and I definitely couldn't fulfill my orders if I was strictly depending on Cerakote solely. So, I mean, as far as like its characteristics versus type 2 or even type 3 anodized and how it compares, it is a pretty amazing coating. And I do want to incorporate it more. It's it's just a pretty tricky process. You know, it's just like painting. If you have one little tiny dust particle that just floats in and says hello, you know what I mean? And it gets stuck to your part, scrapped. You know, scrapped unless it's on a part where you can, you know, laser your logo or possibly mask it or something. But the way I feel about imperfections, one little dot is bad. You know,
Right.
I don't even like my tumbling marks underneath my coating. I feel like those are blemishes. So, yeah.
Sometimes I think that you are seeing things that nobody else sees, because I know you sent me those marker holders and you were like, yeah, they're blems, but I'm sorry. And then I like scoured them. I literally spent like 20 minutes looking over both of them and could not see a single thing wrong with them. And I was like,
Oh,
I don't know what he's talking about.
I'm cursed. I'm cursed, man. I'm probably hallucinating some of these things, but they pop up. So, but also looks like he asked me the PC components that I got lately and why.
Yeah, let's go over that.
Might as well go into that. So my old rig was a pre-built unit from Micro Center, actually, that I just got just to do some CAD stuff. My laptops were just kind of letting me down, and I just needed a little bit more power. And that had a 9700K CPU in it with a GTX 3070 GPU and you know, just your basic stuff. It was just water cooled and yada yada yada. 64 gigabytes of RAM. And it did pretty good, but one of my buddies in the welding community started to get a new computer and he was getting all nerdy on it. So I was like, oh man, now I'm going to have to jump into competition mode. Let's see if we can build one just as good. So Micro Center is pretty cool, man, because there's a lot of components that you just can't get out there on the market. And when it comes to rendering or anything like that, it's pretty incredible what some of these powerhouses are able to do as far as even toolpath calculations and processing speed. You can reduce your toolpath calculation times on like heavy surfacing or nested parts by like a significant amount that I've found out. And it's enough to like really warrant the cost, because sitting there for 20 minutes is terrible. And I know 5-axis guys are sitting there for hours sometimes. So the new computer I went with has 64 gigabytes of RAM, just the same as the other one, but it has the latest GeForce GTX 30 or RTX 3090 graphics card in it. I think they just came out with it not too long ago, and it's really difficult to get your hands on because all of the Bitcoin and just like crypto miners are loving the card for what they're doing.
Oh, I've
So
noticed. Yeah,
yeah,
building
it's
a PC
crazy.
right now sucks.
Yeah, and then the processor that I went with is the new i9 12th gen, the 12900K, and
Okay.
it is lightning fast. It is amazing, and it renders like a dream. So other than that, I got all fancy with the lights and stuff and yada yada yada. I basically got the PC and built it. He asked why I chose these components. I just wanted something as fast as absolute possible. So one, it will last me a few years before it's completely outdated. And two, rendering, I really enjoy live rendering. I don't do a lot of cloud rendering, so I'm constantly manipulating the part in light, trying to figure out where it goes. So cloud rendering would take me days, I feel like, to get it just the way I want it. So I do a lot of live rendering, and that's super intensive, and just the speed that it can process rendering capabilities with some of these newer cards and stuff is pretty awesome. And then my toolpath calculation times, you know, a lot of people will use patterns in Fusion in regards to like if they're doing a strip of parts or something, they'll just cam that first one and then pattern it out, you know, and space it right. And then that saves a ton of power from the computer to calculate all those toolpaths because it's not visually actually calculating all that stuff.
Mhm.
And I don't do that. So I sit there and click every single surface that I want touched by whatever surfacing tool I'm using. And sometimes, you know, I'll have a strip of 10 parts and my toolpath calculation times will be like 20 minutes for just a simple scallop toolpath. And when I went from my last computer to my previous rig, I was able to drop 20% off of my calculation times. And going from or my last computer to this computer, I think I'm seeing upwards of like 55% in reduction in calculation times.
Wow.
So it is significant. Even those 20 minutes, man, like if you're procrastinating or you're not being super productive or your machines are running and like you're just kind of craving for something to do, like it taking 10 less minutes is just so helpful for me.
Totally. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I got
That's
really
productivity.
Absolutely. And I got really in love with like the Mac display. So then I went and bought a 5K monitor from LG so I could get it as close to the Mac display as possible. And it's still not there. But man, that Retina display on their computers is fantastic. And I even went with one of their M1 Pro chips in their new MacBook Pros, and like it just wasn't standing up. So PCs are kind of disposable, but you can just get so much power for the dollar.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's not like you're going out and building a Mac. Like you have to
Oh
order
yeah,
them. So
no, definitely. Definitely, and all the fancy disco lights inside are a plus.
yeah, yeah. It's like 10 minutes less of calculation time for every RGB, right?
Absolutely, yep. Just like stickers add horsepower, man. Lights in your
Exactly.
computer, yep, they add processing speed. But I guess they're overclocking these i9 12th gens to like 6 gigahertz, which is pretty wild.
That's nuts.
Yeah, you
Uh,
look at like even when I was a kid, man, trying to play on dial up or whatever, a video game or something. Just the technology advancements that have occurred in the last like 15 years have been absolutely amazing. It's crazy to think of what's going to happen in the future.
yeah, yeah, it really is. I know. I just had Adam on, and him and Josh were talking about the EUV technology that they're starting to use to produce even more compact silicon chips and stuff. And yeah, just seeing what they're having to do to make the new generation and keep packing more and more power is pretty insane.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. Ryan Sorkness asked, "What were the results of your Insta poll about the DT and DM machines?"
Honestly, I didn't get a lot of feedback. I didn't get a lot of feedback. The feedback that I did get was not positive. So I saw that like Saunders Machine Works uses his DT to as basically what it's designed for as a drill tap center in those on all of his fixture plates. And I think that machine's working absolutely amazing for him. So I was very interested in trying to figure out, is a DT versus the DM. I mean, they're like kind of like little mini brothers. I won't disrespect brother by saying they're a mini brother, but they're they're the poor man's brother. How about that? So
There you go.
you and your you and your business history and being able to get a brother. Oh, I'm just so jealous, man. And then Joe, do you know who Joe at Random Fabrication is?
Yeah, yeah, we've been talking a lot since he got his.
Yeah, man. Gosh, that machine is just so incredible, and seeing it work like that and how fast it is and just the production. I actually sent him some parts that I needed him to machine me. And versus the mini mills, man, he is like cutting my freaking feet, my cutting time down by like 70% on the brother.
Yeah,
So,
they're pretty quick, and like a lot of it is just rapid time too. Like you don't realize how long it takes to do a tool change until you're doing it that quickly.
oh, I know. What are they like sub 1 second tool changes and sub or like 1 second chip to chips or something on those machines?
Something like that. Like, yeah, 118 I think is the new one or something like that. That's
Wow.
it. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's definitely crazy. What
So actually, you brought that up. What machines are you looking at for the future? You said you kind of wanted to add something with possibly automation. Obviously, you're looking at the DM and DT machines. What's your thoughts?
So I was looking more at the DM machines just for the taper as well as the speed. And I don't know, it's kind of hard for me to juggle this. And I wish that I had somebody I need to like fly Ken out here and talk to Ken about how to go about my parts and what my weaknesses are, because I know he did that for like just optimization and how fast can we make this part run for a long time for work. So the little conversation that I had with him about that topic was pretty incredible in regards to what he was saying about the little tiny things that he would change to make, to shave off basically weeks of machine time. It was pretty incredible. So basically, I don't know. The Haas is the easy route because it's pretty easy to get finance through them. Is it my end goal machine? Not at all. Does it work for what it is? Absolutely. I think they are great machines, but end goal's definitely a brother. I've kind of looked at Hercos and some other things like that, and I don't know. I think the end goal's absolutely a brother, just a Speedio or maybe a couple Speedios, and until then, I'll probably just be with Haas machines. I don't know if I'd go DT or DM at this point. I might go VF2 SS, maybe a VF3 or something. But as for right now, just the realistic aspect of it is basically I'm new. Nobody wants to give me any money. So I kind of got to deal with that hurdle.
That's fair. Yeah. That's one thing they don't really tell you when you're starting a business is how to grow business credit. It's kind of a catch 22. They're like, oh, well, you have to have a loan to have business credit, but you can't get a
Yeah,
loan without business credit.
absolutely.
So that's a little tough, but yeah, you'll get there for sure. It's,
Yep, slowly but surely. I'm just happy that I got a couple of good machines and probing and everything else to make my life a little bit easier in the meantime. So
yeah. So let's talk about that fourth. How's that been going? I saw you made that MIG torch holder on it. Have you been using it a fair bit for prototyping, or how's all that?
yeah, the fourth has been fantastic. Um, it's was a little overwhelming at first trying to figure it out and not crash it. Thankfully, I haven't done anything that would cause any issues at this point. Some of the parts are pretty tricky, and I just love the mind power that it takes to try and figure out the orientation and how you're going to do them and how you're going to set your vise up. And when it starts pitching things, all you want is it to pitch it the other way and go 5-axis.
Right.
So, no, the fourth has been great. I've been trying to design parts around the fourth axis itself just so I can use that machine to do short production runs of kind of cool things with some features that you normally wouldn't see on a 3-axis machine. It's been absolutely fantastic. I'm a huge fan. I've been using a fixture, basically just like a trunnion shelf and a 5th-axis vise. I think I want to go to running tombstones or even just a trunnion table to get a little bit more length out of my parts because the 75-100 from 5th-axis is pretty limited. But it's been a dream, man. I'm super pumped to be able to use a 4th-axis machine, even on the mini mill. The mini mill still impressed me. One thing that irritates me is when I was talking about my last experience with the mini mill, it basically left a weird feed forward line, it's a phenomenon called picket fencing, and it's due, according to Haas, biaxial runout. And the machine doesn't have any runout in the spindle taper or even like 6 to 8 inches below by manually turning. But I'm curious if it's inducing some type of axial runout under load at 10,000 RPMs. And it's a very minor harmonic that is just causing an unesthetically pleasing wall finish. And its RA is like, I don't know, if I'm using like a nice sharp polish cutter, I'm in like the 15 RA range. So I mean, it's a decent wall finish, and on a profilometer, it's good, and Haas doesn't care. That's kind of the downfall about that. But aesthetically, man, you know how I am, and I look at that and I'm just like, it doesn't look the way it should. I need consistent feed forward lines. I want to look at it under a microscope and see that every rotation that cutter engages the material, it's taking out the exact same amount of material as it moves forward, and not any weird like little inconsistencies. So as a game for myself, because I like buying, $70,000 mini mill machines that are only worth $30K with all the accessories, I was like, let me buy another one and see if it does the same thing. And if it does, I'll accept it. But if it doesn't, then we
Then
have a
there's an issue.
problem.
Yeah.
So I bought one and it doesn't do it.
Really?
Yeah.
No way.
It's not nearly as bad. I could pull parts off that machine and send them to anodize and be okay with it. The other one I can't. I have to tumble, and tumbling is absolutely terrible.
That's so interesting. I would have thought they would be near identical.
Yeah, no, me too, man. And it's weird because one spindle is super quiet. Okay, so this is a really weird thing, and maybe somebody can chime in. I'd literally pay anybody any amount of money that they could ever want if they could fix this machine for me. So, like, if you guys are out there and you think you can fix it, you let me know. Send me a DM because the Hostex won't fix it for me. But the weird thing is one spindle's quieter than the other. Even though I've broke it in, it's still abnormally more quiet than the other one. And the one that's more quiet is the one that's causing issues. The other machine is just a little bit louder. Obviously, they're belt driven.
Mm-hmm.
And On the one that is causing the issues, which is not a big issue, I've seen it on a lot of Haas machines, even VF2s. It's kind of hit or miss. I can get beautiful mirrored walls all day long on that machine where you could shave in them. On the new machine that actually has consistent feed forward lines visually and under a microscope, I can't get mirror walls on it. So
What the heck?
yeah, dude, it's been a journey. It's been a
I'm sh-
journey.
yeah, I'm sure that's super frustrating because the whole point of buying a second identical machine was to have identical processes, and
Yeah,
that's not happening. It sounds like.
no, the QC is a bit much. So the
Oh
QC is
man.
a bit low, but not to say anybody would be super happy with them. I can't complain too much. I've been on bigger machines. I've seen what bigger, heavier, rigid machines can do. So I think it's kind of playing little mind games with me a little bit because they are, 4,000 pound machines and there is going to be vibration and harmonics and they're not the most rigid machine out there, but they're a great machine. They make my parts. I'm pretty happy with them. Yeah, I have to do some post processing, but other than that, they feel better in your hand after I'm done post processing them instead of just shipping them raw. Just that little tiny edge break, just really kind of palpable feel is like a little bit better than if it was just a raw part going straight to anodize. So there's plus or minuses, but yeah, they're still good machines.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of your machines, Jeff from Akluma wrote in and said,
Oh,
"Public,
Jeff.
yeah, public apology, Brad. I'm sorry, my 3-year-old said what he said about your mills." Which, of course, I had to ask him the story, and I'll let you say the whole story. But I thought
All
it was
right.
hilarious.
So Jeff is a great guy. Absolutely love Jeff. Been over to his shop quite a few times. He's been helping me out. He's 15, 20 minutes away from me. So got some soft jaws from him and he's been helping me prototype some parts and he needed a thread mill. So we kind of just run tools and stuff back and forth to each other. But his kid is awesome. He's always there at the shop. He knows what mills are and lathes, and he runs around playing with carbide end mills, and he has like this little plastic case that he carries all the broken tools that Jeff just slaughters on his machines all day long. And just kidding, Jeff. Anyways, yeah, so now he calls me by name, his kid does. And when I go over there, he says, "Hey, Brad, you have baby mills, right?" And every time he does that, it just hurts my soul just a little bit. My confidence goes down quite a few percentages. And
uh,
I say, "Yep, I have baby mills. One day I'll have a big mill like your dad."
yeah. Well, we were talking before the episode about that, and I was saying that I'm sure it feels the same as like when a girl calls your car cute rather than
Exactly.
nice. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. You put all this time and you think this thing looks aggressive and it's making a bunch of horsepower and it sounds mean and oh, that's cute.
Yeah. You're
Yep.
like, oh, I guess I need a new car now.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You have a baby mill. Let me go cry in a corner for a few minutes here. I'll come back and answer your question.
Before we get on to one of our last questions, I did want to go into your saw purchase and kind of talk about why you got that and what you chose and all that.
Yeah, so I picked up an Ellis 1600. It's just a dry cut saw, no coolant. And I've been cutting dry. I just had a grizzly saw. And the funny thing is, and this is not a knock on anybody, it's just funny to me that you see these guys in the community that started out, with like whatever manual machines and they went to like a Tormach and now they have like a Doosan's or Haas machines or Brothers, and they still have like this like little 4x6 or 7x12 like Grizzly or Harbor Freight or whatever bandsaw.
Uh-huh.
And I love it. Like I am in the same boat. You like just keep going and that saw keeps cutting and you outgrow that saw and you have these big machines and now you're kind of hinging on just a little bit of a loss of productivity in the saw and then you eventually upgrade or you have your stock cut. But I had a 7x12 Grizzly, and before that, I had another 7x12 Jet, and then I had a 4x6. Those are easy saws. They cut what you need them to cut. You got to mess with them a little bit to get them to cut right, but eventually you grow out of them. And I still use my Grizzly as a vertical bandsaw just to cut carriers and stuff on Op2s. But the Ellis kind of came to me because it's a USA made saw. It has just crazy good reviews. And when I did a post on it and I posted that I bought it, I just had hundreds of people message me and say, "I love my Ellis saw." Not one person said anything negative about them. So they're built really well. They just function. And I cut aluminum primarily on it. And yeah, titanium will be a little bit of a trick so I don't light myself on fire. But with a 4/6 variable pitch blade, man, they just munch aluminum like nobody's business. I got a big roller for it so I can cut 12-foot bars all day long, no problem. I have the space for it. And it'll slice through, gang cut, like some 1x3, six of them deep. It'll slice through those things in 40 seconds or something. So it's just real quick. It's not an auto saw. I really wanted to go with an auto saw, but I just don't have the cash for it right now. So this thing will always be a great general purpose dual miter saw, and it'll always serve me well, and they'll last forever. But the end goal is definitely some type of auto saw.
Okay. I mean, it sounds like you made the right choice for where you are right now. So that's no big deal.
Yeah, $3,500 or whatever, and then a roller, and I mean, I can definitely beat the machines with the saw. So until I can't beat the machines with the saw, it'll serve me well.
Yeah, there you go. Our last question from Saber Dynamic was, what is your workflow and fixturing for large quantities of parts?
So, to be completely honest, I run a lot of vice work. Everything I do is pretty much vice work, and I'm able to still produce a large volume of parts per month out of vices. The machines are so small that it just makes it a little bit tricky. Some of my bigger parts, yeah, I'd benefit from longer cycle times on Op2, but Op1, I can still get 2-hour run times on some of my parts. I know that's not significant by any means, but when you're working with basically a 12 by 16 cutting area and you can only put 2 vices in there, or one Pearson pallet or something like that, unless they're very small parts and they're worth me spending a bunch of money on Mighty Bites and everything, it's easier for me just to do vice work and then flip them into the second machine. So if it was just one machine and I wasn't doing like basically a one-piece workflow kind of between two machines, I think that it would be definitely ideal for me to do fixturing just a little bit better. But as far as right now goes, I do Op1s in one machine, and then I flip them into Op2s or Op3s in the second machine. So I can basically do them in half the time that I would be able to do them normally, which has been a huge help. But it's all Sarah jaws and strips of parts. That's kind of my workflow in regards to quantity. Is I'll just nest a bunch of parts in a strip, have the machine slot them out for me, and either I'll break them apart and flip them into jaws, or I'll just chop them apart with a vertical and flip them into jaws. And it works for me. It's definitely a little bit of a bottleneck sometimes, but if I can get the flow right, it's pretty productive.
Okay. I think that's totally fair. I mean, it clearly works for you. And if you're getting that kind of runtime, that's personally, I think, more than enough to get other stuff done.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's some of the flips when you're doing 3-minute cycles, man, that kill me. So those ones are the ones that are driving me to make some pallets or some better fixturing. But I'm kind of just enduring those because they're new products and I'm still trying to see kind of how they perform and how the market views them and if they're actually going to be a long-term thing. And then after that, it'll be a little bit easier for me to justify spending a bunch of time making fixtures, which are obviously the best and most productive thing that you can do. But again, not that long ago, I didn't even know what a CNC machine was. So I'm just doing what I can do as fast as I can and just trying to pay the bills right now. So sometimes I sacrifice productivity for that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of small businesses can empathize. You got to, sometimes you have to grind through the stuff that sucks so that you can get to the point where you can make a good.
Exactly. And as soon as I have run times, or as soon as I have the time, my goal is to get 6 months ahead just for myself. So I have 6 months of bills in the bank, and then I can kind of just slow down a little bit and put a little bit more time and thought into my design process, put a little bit more time and thought into the actual work holding process. And as soon as I can get there, I think things will be a lot more productive. But right now it's just like go, 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 ship, 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 go, 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 ship. And it's just like I have no time to really even stop and think.
That's
So,
fair. Yeah. So speaking of new products, JT from DFM asked, when are the paper towel holders coming?
oh, I know. I know they were coming, and then material prices just kind of messed it all up for me. As far as the retail price that I was trying to go for, and just the cost of materials and the machining time, because that whole bar assembly is kind of a real beefy thing, and it all is lathe turned. So me and Jeff were kind of working on it together at Akluma, And, it was a two-piece bar that snaps together with magnets and they kind of index each other in. And then there's two flange nuts on both sides that actually hold the paper towel in onto the bar, and then it's threaded so you can unscrew that and change it for just there's about an 1/8 inch difference in paper towel to the cardboard tube length. If anybody is curious about this, I bought about 100+ different paper towels and measured measured them. So, and then there's a locking flange nut, so once you do get it adjusted, you can actually twist this knurled locking flange nut and seat the flange nut itself, and then you just basically pop the two parts out of the sides of the paper towel, throw a new one on, they magnetically snap together, and then they drop down into the frame and then rotate on bearings, or they rotate on magnets. So I'm basically using the magnetic pull and the concentricity of the magnets, like the property that they link together really nice and concentrically, to rotate the paper towels to add friction so you don't have a runaway paper towel holder. I've thought a lot about this. I know it's silly, but but they will come as soon as I can make them cost effective.
That's fair. That's totally fair. They are a really cool design, so I look forward to seeing those out in the wild.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I just got to figure out how to just chop a little bit of material out of there and still make them function well. And instead of just making a really cool machine paper towel roll holder that's kind of just normal and a paper towel roll goes on it and you just move on in life, I got to try and over engineer it like usual to the point where it's almost impossible to manufacture. So
Well, it wouldn't be a HGI product if it wasn't like that, though, right?
yeah, man. Gotta try. Yeah. Lose money to make things look cool. That's the name of the game here at HGI.
No, you're making really cool stuff, and it's clearly worth it for everybody. Everybody loves your stuff for that reason. If it was like a basic paper towel holder, I don't think it'd sell.
No, it wouldn't, man. The tool paths and the surfacing and going the extra mile are basically the business model. So it's what's working.
So that brings us to shop news and new things. Are there any other new things going on or new products that you want to plug?
Not really any new products that I want to plug. I did the little can receivers, and I've done the little mag tabs, and then the little notepad deals, the little pocket notepad deals and whatnot. Just trying to get out a couple of things that have been sitting in my cloud on Fusion for way too long. And they're the things that you don't really have enough time to get to because you think that they're insignificant, but then you actually go ahead and make them, and then you realize that people want them. So it's pretty cool to just see I think I have a really rare following in regards to how they kind of approach my stuff, and I'm super, super, super thankful that I'm able to come up with an idea and basically have a bunch of people want it before it's even actually made, just off of a render. And they have enough faith that I'll actually be able to come through with that product the way that it looks and functions and the way that I kind of portray it. So I'm super thankful for that. And I really appreciate all the support from the Instamachinist community, as well as all of my customers on Instagram and anybody who's listening. None of this would be possible without you. And I thank you guys silently every single day. So
awesome. Well, that brings me to the last question I ask every guest, which is, what did you research this week? And it can be anything and everything.
What did I research this week? That computer took a heavy amount of research to try and figure out what was going to work. I had a guy named Cad Chris. He was on here. I don't know what episode he was, but he's absolutely brilliant off of Instagram. Do you remember what episode he was about? He wasn't too far back.
No, he wasn't. I'll look it up real quick. Chris is awesome.
He is so smart, man. He knows everything about so many different topics that I wish I was more educated on. And he's been helping me kind of with the computer build and sending me links and different things that he finds from, Autodesk users that are really trying to figure out how to push the limits on performance when it comes to PC builds and what you really need to make things function differently than SolidWorks or
it's
any
significantly
other
different.
Absolutely.
So he was 99, episode 99.
Episode 99. Okay. Yeah. If you guys haven't listened to episode 99, check it out. Cad Chris is one of the smartest guys I've ever met. So yeah, just really that computer, man, just sitting there nerding out. And I love the fact that before, nerds are like the new football players, man. and I'm happy to be a nerd. So,
So I
yeah,
guess looking back on your build now that you have it together, are there any other things that you wish you had bought or things that you wish you had changed?
no, I'm absolutely completely happy. I may have went with 128 gigabytes of RAM just for that RAM flex, but I definitely don't need it. So no, I'm actually pretty happy with it. I thought it over and it worked out pretty good. One of the few things in my life that I actually thought about before just buying it.
Well, it's awesome. I'm really glad you're happy with it then, because that's, especially right now, they are not a cheap thing to get into. Like we built
No.
a fairly bare bones shop computer for, so that Brad and I both have one, and even that was, I think, double what we spent building the almost exact same computer last year.
Yep. Well, even just the graphics card, the GT or the RTX 3090 right now is, I think it retails at like 15.99. Don't hold
Mm,
me to that, but it's somewhere around there. I paid 22 for it.
right. Yeah, because they had it in stock.
Yep, because they had it in stock and they were upping it big time. So,
Yeah, like we have in the shop computer, it's like an RX 580 or something. It's like a, I don't know, 4 or 5 year old card. And when we bought it for the first computer, it was $80 used, I think. And now they're all 400 or 500 bucks.
yeah, man, cards that were like $300 or like $800 right now. It's insane.
Yeah, it's not fun, but I guess it is what it is. You got to make money, and you got to. It's one of those things you can't really skimp on too much.
Yeah, no. No, I mean it's the most important thing in the shop besides the machines, man, and kind of even over the machines. Without the computer, the machines don't move. So, I mean, I'm sitting at that thing, developing blood clots in my legs every day. So, so it's been a it's been a wild ride. But I love this podcast and I love what you're doing. And for you to be able to run your business 12 hours a day and still do these podcasts, I said it last time, I'll say it again. It is absolutely impressive.
I appreciate it. I mean, going back to the whole mental health issue, now that I'm working alone, I don't have a whole lot of interaction with people. So
Yep.
having, an hour or two blocked out every week to talk to people who are like minded is probably aiding and keeping me sane. So I definitely appreciate everybody coming on. Speaking of thank yous, thank you to Nick from P3D. He's actually my guest next week, and he
Okay.
joined the Patreon this week, and I really appreciate it, Nick. And thanks to everyone who backs the Patreon, because it lets me take this time and get to talk to people like you, Brad. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule, because I know we are both slammed right now. And yeah, just thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's always nice. This community and all of the machinists in it are changing the world as far as just bringing new people in and helping people with stuff and just constantly being huge influences in this world we live in. So thank all of you guys and thank you for supporting this podcast. It is absolutely worth it.
Awesome. Well, I will be back next week, and thank you guys again.